Welcome back, reefers. This episode is going to be amazing. So I have in store for you some of the coolest and strangest things that we have done in the last year to make our reefing life a whole lot easier. Now, I haven't seen these mentioned anywhere else, and we like to think of ourselves as a modern day MacGyver, just finding random things that work and look great. So stay tuned. In this episode, we're going to show you all of the coolest tips, tricks, and hacks that will make your life so much easier. Here we go. All right, the first thing I want to talk about is tank transfer method. So I don't know what everybody is thinking talking about using glass 10-gallon or any kind of gallon tanks to do a tank transfer series. They have got to be crazy. So if you use a plastic bin or even 5-gallon buckets for your smaller fish, you're going to have such an easier time cleaning the tanks and drying them out. They don't have the lips around the edge where water can hide and congregate, and it just makes your life so much easier. You do not have to worry about breaking them when you're banging them around in the tub trying to clean them out. You don't have to worry about any glass heaters or thermometers banging around on them. And honestly, the fish seem to like it a lot more. We found that they seemed a lot less stressed by things that were moving past the tank when somebody walked in the room, and they just seem a lot calmer and a lot happier in this situation. So I would highly recommend, based on what we've been doing, to use plastic totes, 5-gallon buckets, maybe not the orange one. We did have a weird response from our clownfish in a previous video from that one, but white 5-gallon buckets and long totes even for your really big fish. We used a Rubbermaid. This is I think a 30-gallon Rubbermaid tote because we needed some swimming length for the tang and for the harlequin tusk that we had quarantined. Next up, command strips. I love command strips. You can put these things anywhere. You can put them inside of your doors for your cabinets. You can put them on the outside of the tank. You can put them on the wall. You can put them on your kids. I wouldn't recommend that one, but it's probably possible. Another weird thing we use, drywall troughs. These things catch water. Enough said. Carts. Oh my gosh, I don't know what we would do without these carts. So the one on the left, we actually bought at Harbor Freight way back when we were first setting up the tank because we needed help lifting the tank up onto the stand. So it's got a hydraulic lift on it, and you just step it up like a little jack, and lo and behold, it rises up to where you need it. But this thing has been a lifesaver. We actually ended up buying another cart. We didn't need another one that lifted, so we just got one that will just move around for us. And when we mix our salt water, we do it on this cart. So it comes in handy when we are draining tanks for whatever reason, when we have to do water changes. We have another 30-gallon bucket that we use for emptying water out of the tanks, and we just pop that onto one of the carts and wheel it to the door and dump it outside. So these things are a lifesaver, and I don't know what we would do without them. When it's time for us to fill up the ATO on the Red Sea, everybody who has this tank probably knows what a pain in the neck it is to try and get this thing full of water. So we just wheel the cart over in front of the tank and lift it up so that the bucket is higher than the ATO reservoir, and boom, there you go. Gravity works, and it takes no time at all to fill up the ATO. Alright, next up, power heads. So you can end up with a lot of power heads in your tank, and we were really kind of struggling to use them with the Apex and with the available outlets that we had, because every time it was ready to do a water change, I had to turn off and unplug every single one of these different outlets. And so eventually we decided to take one power strip, plug it in on the Apex outlet, and put all of the power heads on the same power strip. Now when we're ready to do a water change, we just flip the switch off on the power strip and it turns off all the power heads at once. Ooh, speaking of power heads, I used to get really annoyed because the area with the return pump, because the flow is so slow in that area, used to get really, really gunked up. And I figured out that if I put a power head on the back wall and just let it kind of blow across the bottom of that area, it didn't collect all of the sand and gunk and algae that used to build up. It just essentially gets cycled back up into the tank if it didn't get filtered out previously, and it has another opportunity to either settle out or make its way back into the sump. I know that sumps are usually where the bad kids get banished, like Al Capone, but he does a great job of keeping things clean. Our next hack is specimen containers. These things are handy to have around the house in general, especially when you're moving fish around, but what really is nice about them is that you can hang them on the back of a tank or off the side and keep things really close by that you need that tend to get wet. So things like your clips that you put food on, maybe a toothbrush or a turkey baster, things that you're reaching for all the time when you're down in the tank and you don't want to get water everywhere when you pull it out. One of the other things I keep in the specimen container is the ketchup bottle. I bought a new one when I was at the grocery store one day, and it works really well for mixing up my coral food. And so I can just put a little water in there, put a scoop of food in it, shake it up really well, and then it's really easy to spot feed the corals with this. I also keep my new bottle of vinegar water near the tank with a roll of paper towels to help clean up the drips and things that are on the outside of the tank that drive me crazy. And last but not least, we have some food preparation. These little containers for storing paint are pretty airtight, they're waterproof, they don't leak, and they perfectly fit 2 cubes of frozen food. So what we do now is at the end of each week, we wash all of these containers and we pre-cut or measure out the food. We usually do about 2 per cup. But we don't use that much in the tank each day, so each one might last a day and a half to 2 days. And it makes it really convenient. I just throw all of them back in the freezer, and then when I run out of one of them, I pull another one out, stick it in the refrigerator, and it's ready to go. Alright, well that's it. That's all I've got. And before I go, I just have to show you this guy. He was at the local store the other day and trying so hard to love on this anemone, and he was getting nothing but the cold shoulder back. Dude, you're doing it wrong.